Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Well, have you recovered from a wild week of college football last Saturday? I still got a hangover from it. Welcome to the College Football X. I'm John Wilkerson. John Nelson will join us a little later. It was a Saturday of stunners. In the Big Ten, you had number 11 Southern Cal losing at Minnesota. Washington gets a little revenge from the national title game against Michigan, upsetting the number 10 at the time Wolverines. And then what happened in the SEC was pure craziness. Mizzou getting owned by Texas A&M. Arkansas shocks number 4 Tennessee in Fayetteville. And all those upsets were high on the wild scale factor. But if you're looking for a holy, well, you know what I'm referring to, type of upset, what occurred in Nashville, Tennessee, well, that applies. Vanderbilt stunning at number 1, then number 1 Alabama, 40-35, starting a wild party in Music City, USA. We lead off the College Football X with Andrew Allegretta, the voice of the Vanderbilt Commodores. And Andrew, welcome to the College Football X.
I am glad to be here, and I'm glad we beat Alabama so we could do this.
Well, my first question is just how different is things in Nashville right now on the Vanderbilt campus after beating number 1 Alabama?
It's really different. I think there's a lot of things that I would say I've noticed over the past couple of days. Some of it is just, I'll tell you this, like I pulled into my driveway yesterday after getting home from work wearing a Vanderbilt shirt, and someone walking down the street with their dog said, "Hey, you work at Vanderbilt? That was incredible." And I've been here for a couple of years, and I will tell you, that's the first time that's happened. So there's so many little things like that that have been really pretty special here in the first 48 hours, 72 hours after the victory. All of it was magical, serendipitous, and we've enjoyed every single second of it.
Now, let's go back to last week as you're leading up to the Alabama game. And what was that like? And did you ever get a sense when you were in the facility or even before kickoff that this team has the confidence to maybe pull this off?
Well, I think this team has always had the confidence through the first couple of games. And I think the Virginia Tech game sort of buoyed that confidence quite a bit. Some of it is really rooted in what Diego Pavia has done. And he's galvanized the team in a way that certainly no player that I have ever seen, I think across all sports at all of my stops, has ever done. In terms of the Alabama game specifically, I was pretty confident that they were going to give Alabama a pretty significant punch in the mouth. I don't know that I thought it was going to be 13-0 after the first, 7 minutes of gameplay. What I didn't know was once Alabama countered with a haymaker, how would we respond after that? And you know what? We responded so well. And I don't think that haymaker really happened until the third quarter. And even then, as it's been documented, like Vanderbilt led this game wire to wire. So there was never a moment where any of those haymakers that Bama tried to throw landed in such a significant way. The confidence of this team is really, really high, but sometimes you can be confident and it still doesn't work out. So the fact that they had the confidence, had the belief, and then executed on top of that, it's kind of the perfect trifecta there.
Well, I just recall on Saturday, I umpire youth baseball games, and I just finished my second game and was heading home. Happened to look down on my phone and saw it was 23-7 Vanderbilt heading in late in the second quarter. And I just kind of mentioned, holy, you know what?
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's leading Alabama. And you should have seen the head turns from some of the parents and the coaches and some of the players when I said that. So it really resonated. I picked the game up when I got home in the second half. And again, the haymakers, you mentioned that Alabama kept throwing those haymakers, getting those big plays, but Vanderbilt responded with big plays, and they controlled the ball, I thought, in the second half, and that was key.
I think the most significant part of the ball game, and this might be like a super no duh comment, but when it was 40-35 and Alabama scored that touchdown with Williams on the run, and Vanderbilt got the football back with 2.5 minutes, I think there's probably a lot of people that thought if Alabama gets the football back, they're going to win the football game. And I think in past moments, perhaps Vanderbilt would not have converted the way that they did. But they did convert, and they did not let Alabama get the football back. The play calling, the execution, the guts, the moxie, the runs, the toughness, to have that sort of strength late in the fourth quarter was massive. And again, it speaks to the confidence that they had, the play calling of Tim Beck, and again, the execution of Diego Pavia to not give Alabama the football back with 2:30 to go and run out the clock is pretty remarkable.
And when it was over, did you saw the final seconds coming down? Did you ad-lib the lines, or was that something you prepared?
I was just talking with somebody else about this. 95% of it just in the moment. Me personally, as a broadcaster, I know that, and I've learned this in the past too, that I like having at least the jumping off point. And then from there, whatever happens, happens. The only thing that I knew I wanted to say if something like this happened was, is this real life? And I sort of felt like that was, something that could resonate with Vanderbilt fans who have not seen this since 1984 and have, for some of the ones that have been around for forever, have only seen this twice in their life, 1969 and 1984. The rest of it was all just in the moments. Whatever the call is, I'm so thrilled that we all had this moment. I was thrilled for my color analyst, who was a running back on the 1982 team. He certainly never beat Alabama. You could tell the moment that was hitting him up there in the booth, and especially as his phone just absolutely exploded with text messages from former players, and just to watch the students pour out, watch the goalposts come down. I think I said at one point after the ball game, like, I don't want to go to break. I just want to sit here and talk about every single thing that we're watching unfold in front of us, because again, like, none of us are naive. This was massive, and you do want to let every single second of that wash over you.
We're talking to Andrew Allegretta, the voice of the Vanderbilt Commodores. And yeah, that line you mentioned that you prepared was appropriate. But you also said in the middle of that you encouraged the fans to storm the field, which cost a couple $1,000s or more for Vanderbilt Athletics.
Right.
Not that you were encouraging, but the goalpost.
That wasn't a call to action. It was just a description of what was happening in front of me. That's right.
Okay. All right. There you go. But the goalpost came down and marched them down to the Cumberland River. Any truth to the rumor you were part of that?
No, for sure. There's not to give away names, but like, I know you and I were talking about our old days in the ACC. I know of an ACC announcer that called baseball games at one point that his team, I think, either made it to Omaha or something like that. And like, after the final out, he just took the headset off and just started down to the field, which I got a real good laugh at that one. No chance I was leaving that booth. We had a job to do. But there's so many crazy stories. Like I'm like 99% sure I hope this is not, I do know that Andrew Burnett, the Predators head coach, was leaving Bridgestone at the time, basically, that the goalposts were being marched down Broadway. And I think he had to like help the students lift it up, or like they were having trouble at the moment. Or so the Preds coach got involved in marching the goalposts right down to the Cumberland. There's a great video. There's a great video that one of the news stations here put together. It's a compilation of like all of the chopper video, because they had a police escort, right? Like they were helped through Broadway down to the Cumberland, of all of the helicopter chopper video, like the night vision stuff, and all of the police scanner chatter on top of it. Like at one point, like one of the choppers or the police officers going like, my understanding is their goal is to get the goalposts into the river. So it's like you're just listening to these cops like just track it right down from West End to Broadway through the honky tonks and then dumping it right into the river. You talk about, and Clark has a bunch called Vanderbilt, like a one of one school. I mean, that's pretty one of one stuff. I don't know anywhere else in America that you can have a game like this and have it marched through one of the most significant neon light places in America right into a river for 3 miles. They took it 3 miles.
That is great stuff. I want to shift back to the football team. The New Mexico State connection. You mentioned a few of them, Diego Pavia and Tim Beck. Jerry Kill's part of it, who guided New Mexico State to a historic season last year. Many of those components came over to Vanderbilt. And Clark Lee kind of, I guess, recruited them, I guess, the best way to put it. How did all that come together and the impact it's had on the program?
Well, in terms of exactly how it came together, I don't have all of the details there. I think one of the things that was really significant is that singular moment after losing to Tennessee back in 23 to cap off Clark's second 0-8 season. And I did a post-game radio interview with him, and he said, things have to and things will change. And then in the preceding couple of days, you started to get the press releases. Offensive coordinator is going to change. Defensive coordinator is going to change. Strength and conditioning coach is going to change. We're going to become more transactional in the transfer portal. And then from that, all of the mechanisms worked behind the scenes. The one thing that I do know, because Clark has talked about it, is watching New Mexico State beat Auburn. Mm-hmm. I know he watched that game and said, this is everything that I've wanted this program to be. So then he began the recruiting process of all of that. And Diego Pavia, sold him on a moment that I think not a lot of coaches would say was the singular moments. Coaches get sold on arm talent or running ability or measurables. And Clark said the single moment that sold him on Diego Pavia was the moment that he threw an interception versus Auburn, tracked down the guy who picked it off, and then just suplexed him right into the ground. That sort of toughness and intensity and tenacity right to the final whistle meant the world to Clark. And, we've had players in the past that, to be respectful and to be polite would not have done something like that. And we've seen plays on the field where that would not have happened. So once he saw that on film, obviously Clark threw the throttle down to get the recruiting together, to get the finances together, and to make it happen, and he did.
Well, there's another game to play this Saturday.
There sure is.
You get to go to the Bluegrass, to Lexington, Kentucky, against the Wildcats to face a Mark Stoops defense, which can add a wet blanket to a celebration like you guys are having this week.
It sure can.
So we're recording this early in the week, so you haven't done the total deep dive yet as you prep for the broadcast. But where are some things you'll be looking at when you prep for this game?
Big plays, and not to reduce football down to its most fundamental sort of stuff. But these are two teams that dominate time of possession. I think Vanderbilt is third in the conference, and Kentucky is fourth in the conference in time of possession. So you've got colliding styles. Which means whoever can take more possessions away from the other team is gonna win this game, and who can break out of that kind of collision of styles will be really, really significant. And Kentucky has been ultra good throughout the first couple of weeks of the season. They obviously played a very close game versus Georgia. They had the upset versus Ole Miss. Kentucky's coming off a bye. So I think it will be really, really interesting to see how that defense schemes up Diego Pavia, schemes up Tim Beck's offense, what other wrinkles Tim Beck can throw. I suspect Vanderbilt will be very mentally ready. I am curious to see the physical fatigue level of this team. I suspect they'll be fine. It's still 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but to an extent, it could be like, a basketball player who just doesn't have the same legs and the jump shot is a little bit short. So we'll see if that, exactly. So we'll see if that becomes a factor, but whoever can find those big flashing moments will likely have a significant advantage in this game. And how that comes together, whether it's a turnover, I don't know. I will tell you this. One of the things that Vanderbilt has done just so well throughout the course of the first 5 games is capitalize on turnovers. I think they've got 41 points off of turnovers so far this season. all of last year, it was 21. That was,
Wow.
12 games to 5. They've doubled their output off of turnovers. So if they can create a couple of turnovers and score points off of it, you've stolen the extra possessions and you've stolen the momentum.
So where can Vanderbilt fans or college football fans in general listen to your
Sure.
broadcasts? And what else can you, what else is going on, what you're doing with Vanderbilt football?
Well, certainly for fans listening to this, and specifically outside of the Nashville region, the two best places, or I suppose three, would be the Vanderbilt Athletics app for those inclined to download. If you don't have the Varsity Network app, that's a pretty cool one. It's got all of the college football broadcasts, or at least most of them across the country. So if you are a media nerd, like I am for sure, you can kind of bounce around and listen to a bunch of different play-by-play broadcasters or games across America. That's a pretty cool one. Again, that's the Varsity Network app. And for those of you with SiriusXM, our broadcasts on a rotating basis are there as well. What else is going on? I don't know. At this point, in time, John, like it's the 8 minutes in front of my face.
There you go. Hey, well, I just wanted to promote some of your stuff you're
Yeah.
doing. And sometimes you draw a blank.
I'm so thrilled for this moment for Vanderbilt fans. And
me too.
I think, one of the other things that has been just so cool to watch is, again, I mentioned the fact that it was like almost serendipitous. And I can't remember at this point if I've mentioned it or not, but just to watch things that are uniquely Nashville happen the way that they did. Like Nate Bargatze hosts SNL on the night that you have your biggest win in program history, and he gives you a shout out. Or one of your most forward-facing alums, Willie Geist, happens to be there and can talk about it on the Today Show. Or like the music community takes note. Like the guy that sang the song that was playing while we tore down the goalpost starts talking about us. Or for those that are like super duper in the weeds, it's not super duper. He's very popular. It's just of a different age demographic. Theo Vaughn happens to be at that ball game, and him and Quincy Skinner are the one that dumped the Gatorade bath on Clark. I mean, you can't get more intersection of pop culture and sports in any other place than Vanderbilt, and it happened in the most unbelievable serendipitous way. It was such a moment that I think a lot of us around here have kind of said, like, man, how do you tap into all of this Nashville stuff? We talk about the degree, the city, the league, and for a pretty special moment in time, those things did collide.
Well, Nick Saban is wrong. It's not easy to win at Vanderbilt. And I love the fact that you guys played that afterwards.
I give all of the credit in the world to our marketing staff. They have done such a good job here with this program. And, and this is an inside baseball comment, and so be it. But like, when you don't win games, it's hard to talk about all of the other gears that grind within an athletic department, because it's about the wins and losses. But when you have the moments when you can be successful on the field, it gives a chance to shine a light on all of the people on a day-to-day basis that are doing great work within an athletic department. So whether it's our sports information staff, which, I work in the same office as them, I can tell you how many interviews. I can't tell you exactly how many interviews that they've done, because, their phone is on fire as well. And the work that our marketing staff has done to put this together, and the fact that, within a couple of hours after this game, if you wanted to buy a 2 or 4 inch slice of the goalpost, you could do it. We had a website available right on vucommodores.com. Like, all of that sort of stuff takes so much heavy lifting. And because you had the moment, so many people were ready for it. And that's a credit to this athletic department, which, at times has kind of taken its thumps because of the on the field stuff. But in this moment, the athletic department was ready.
Well, it's a great story, great moment. I got caught up in it on Saturday. Andrew, I appreciate you taking the time. It was great catching up with you.
I know.
And I appreciate you taking the time to be on our podcast on the College Football X.
Happy to do it. And hopefully we keep winning some ball games. I'd love to be back.
I've got your phone number now.
Yes, you do.
John Nelson joins me when we come back.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter @OSG Sports, for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football. Now back to the College Football X. Here's John Nelson.
The College Football X continues here on the OSG Sports Network, and it's time to catch up with Mike James at the Mid Report, where we get to find out everything you always wanted to know about Navy and were afraid to ask, but we're going to ask it. Mike, thanks for dropping by the X.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Coming into this season, and I will have some full disclosures coming up in just a little bit about our weekend show. Coming into this season, what were the expectations on campus for Navy football, and your thoughts on what those expectations should be coming into the 2024 season?
So the expectation, there's a couple ways to look at it. I think one way is that I think there was a high ceiling. I think there's a sense that as bad as the offense was for Navy last year, they were still 5-7, one game away from a bowl game. They still finished 500 in the conference. I think there was a lot of feeling that if the offense could just get to being just average instead of one of the worst in football last year, I think there was some optimism that, yeah, we could see 7-8 wins in a bowl game. As it turns out, it's been a lot better than average, and off to a 5-0 start, I think is better than pretty much anyone could have hoped for.
How much of a difference, and I might be underselling this question, I probably should rephrase it, but how much of a difference has Drew Cronick been in laying things out and letting folks be folks? And it's almost like free expression almost within the Navy framework, but there's free expression there. How much of a difference has Drew made?
I think the biggest... So I think one thing that people have to remember is that fans, we all like to look at schemes, we also like to look at X's and O's and talk about that kind of thing. But offenses or teams aren't designed, or they're not coached by schemes, they're coached by people. And I think first and foremost, Drew Cronick is just a cultural fit that just gets everything that the place is about, that the players are about, and knowing what his players can handle. Something else I think that's a big difference. So last year's offensive coordinator was Grant Chestnut, who came over from Kennesaw State, ran an option offense there. But when he got to Navy, he didn't install his Kennesaw State offense. He was creating something new, and there's lots of reasons for that with the rule changes around blocking and whatnot, but he was installing something new. And as you go through the season, the first half of the season, the offense actually looked decent enough, but teams started to adjust to it, and every week it just kind of got worse and worse. With Cronick, he's running an offense that he created and has run for 20 years. He is not adjusting to things on the fly. He has already seen everything that defenses like to do, so he already has an answer for everything that defenses like to do. And I think what you've been able to see is a lot of just in-game adjustments that are so fast, like from play to play, that Navy has 5 one-play touchdown drives this season. It's just immediate how fast the changes are. And I think that has been the biggest on-field difference.
49 against Bucknell, 38 against Temple, 56 against Memphis, 41 against UAB, 34 against Air Force. Those last two on the road. And full disclosure, we've covered Drew ever since his time at Reinhardt in the NAIA and Mercer and to show you my age, 1AA. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm not afraid to say 1AA. To see this blossom the way that it has it even surprised you to the levels that it has advanced this year because of all of the numbers and all of the yards and the 5 one-play touchdown drives? How much of this has surprised you in your coverage this year over at the Mid Report?
So I wasn't too sure what to expect, at least scheme-wise, coming in when Cronick came over to Navy. I had seen a lot of his like games from when he was at Furman and even back to Reinhardt. You see some clips and you wonder, well, how much of that is going to be part of his Navy offense? I think one of the surprises that I've had is how much just straight triple option we've seen, to really kind of take advantage of what the players already know. And I think that's where my biggest surprise is how quickly the players have adopted the new offense. I expected, I mean, Chronic's numbers speak for himself if you go back through his history. But how quickly Navy's players have been able to adopt Chronic's offense. And I think a lot of it is because they're leveraging a lot of the things that they already know into this kind of hybrid triple option wing T package that is kind of a nightmare to defend.
You ain't kidding, brother. I mean, when you look at what Blake Horvath has been able to do, it's at times it's almost artistry. And as someone who enjoys the man-on-man assignment football like I do, when to see something like this run as successfully as it is almost like watching art happen in front of you. We have maintained on the network that Blake Horvath should be, if things continue the way that they have been, that he should be getting an invite to the Downtown Athletic Club by the time the regular season is over. Is there any kind of buzz involving that whatsoever when it comes to him and the talent pool here in Division I? What is there any buzz about anything like that at all?
Oh, there's buzz, and there's precedent. Back in 2015, Keenan Reynolds finished in the top 5 in Heisman voting. Didn't get the invite, but he was still, a legitimate candidate. There's a long way to go. I mean, it's 5 games into the season, and it's probably the 5 easiest games that Navy would have, not including Memphis. A lot of tough games left on the schedule, but if Navy can get through those games, then I think and Horvath still performs at the level he's performing, then I think it would be a legitimate conversation. I mean, there's a lot of really outstanding players this season in college football, but I think Horvath would be counted among them, especially if he keeps this up against, they got Notre Dame coming up, they have Tulane coming up. You get those, if you're standing out in those games that have an impact on the national stage, on the conference stage, then yeah, I think he would have that kind of credibility.
We have Genty from Boise. We've got Horvath on our short list early. We have insert Alabama player here. Traditionally, right now it would be Jalen Milroe. Those would be like 3 of the ones that we have on our list. And Horvath, because of what we've seen, is immediately gone to be a part of the list. And then we had Diego Pavia and Travis Hunter. That would be the 5 that we would invite if we were the athletic club in New York City. That's what we're staring at right now. How realistic is it that you end up with an Army-Navy doubleheader at the end of the season when it comes to a conference championship in the AAC and then the Army-Navy game? Are folks even looking that far ahead? And people outside the AAC, we're frothing our mouth at the idea of having a doubleheader Army-Navy that could impact the CFP 12. Is there any talk about that so far?
So I went to Birmingham for Navy's game against UAB, and I flew home afterwards. And this was the same weekend of the Alabama-Georgia game, so it was full of Alabama people at the airport there. And I was wearing a Navy cap, and a guy in the TSA line in front of me came to me and wanted to start talking about Navy football. Like, oh, you guys have a good team this year, and I can't wait for Army Navy. And when people are talking about Army Navy in September,
yeah,
then that tells you that something's cooking. I think Army has a much easier path to the championship game. Their schedule this year, I mean, I don't want to call it a joke, but they got a gift. I mean, there's Navy is playing Memphis and Tulane and USF in conference. Those are 3 of the favorites in the preseason, and certainly Memphis and Tulane were probably the 2 top picks. People thought UTSA would be better, and they've had a pretty disappointing year. And to be fair to Army, that UTSA was expected to do well, and they were on the schedule, but they're not. So Navy, I think, has the toughest road ahead in the conference. I think if you look at conference strength of schedule, Navy is the games remaining, Navy is number 1, and I think Army is number 10. So I think for Army to get to the championship game, I think is actually a very, very legitimate. I would even say that's probable at this point. For Navy, it will probably come down to either them, Tulane, or Memphis. If Navy can get through that, if Navy can beat Tulane, I think Navy has the edge, because they would have the tiebreaker over them in Memphis, even regarding the result of the USF game. If Navy loses that game, then the road becomes a lot more difficult, because I think Tulane would probably have the edge there.
To answer your question, for those that don't know the answers, if you go to goarmywestpoint.com, I don't know if you can actually say those words or not, considering what you cover on a daily basis. It is UAB at West Point, East Carolina at West Point. Then it's a bye week. Then it's Air Force at West Point. Then they go to North Texas and play in Denton. Then it's another bye week. Then it's Yankee Stadium. Okay, that's going to be a squeezed-in field at Yankee Stadium playing Notre Dame. And then you've got UTSA at West Point. And then the ACC Championship game December 6th, the week before, Navy at Northwest Stadium in Landover, Raljon, or however you want to phrase it. So I see your point about the easy part of the schedule. Theirs is kind of lean in one direction, where yours is going to be kind of a slog, or at least a slog at points, I would think.
It is. In North Texas, don't sleep on North Texas. They can put up some points, so they'll give Army a run for their money. But I think just in terms of the number of challenges that Army has left versus Navy, Army has a much cleaner path to the championship game. So I'll be honest, there's nothing I want less than back-to-back Army-Navy games. Some things should only happen once a year. It's that I don't. It's hard for me to even conceive this, but yeah, it's definitely, people are definitely talking about it.
When it comes to the rest of what has made Navy successful this year, we can talk defense, talk about other players in addition to Horvath, because he obviously gets a lot of the attention. But what have been some of the other keys to this 5-0 start this season from what you've been able to see?
So I think, outside of the performance of the offense, which I think is the big story, was the biggest question mark coming into the season and has been the biggest answer. I think the defense has done its job. If you look at the Memphis game, it was not a great performance, but they made enough plays in that game where they were able to kind of hold serve, break Memphis's serve a little bit, and as efficient as the offense has been, they were able to stay one step ahead. It's kind of funny with the defense. A lot of the games that we've seen from Navy have been sort of atypical Navy game plans. And Navy tends to be pretty aggressive defensively, but against Memphis, they really backed off, kind of figuring, well, we'll let them run the ball and just prevent the big play. And Memphis did run the ball very effectively and almost came back to win that game at the end. So I think the other one thing that the defense has done a good job with is turnover. Navy is a top 10 team in turnover margin. And so when you have a defense that's creating turnovers and an offense that isn't turning the ball over, you're just going to get more possessions. And as efficient as the offense has been, you're just going to score more points. So it's been a winning formula.
All right, this weekend, you are the grand operator of the bye week, so everybody kind of gets to watch everybody else. So coming up in 2 weeks, it is homecoming against Charlotte. When you look at this bye week, what are you going to be doing? What are you going to be staring at since there's a bye week involving Navy? What other games are you going to be having on your radar since the mid-report's going to be looking at everybody else? What else is in your spot shadow this weekend?
So my original plan was actually, my daughter goes to UCF, and I was going to go to the UCF Cincinnati game. But I live in Jacksonville, so I have no idea what my plans are. I just hope I have power this weekend to be able to watch games.
Yes.
Generally, you got to keep an eye on anything that Tulane's doing. You got to keep an eye on just the rest of the conference. And that seems like an obvious thing to say, but to be 5-0 at this point for Navy and to care about what's happening in the rest of the conference at this point in the season is something that Navy fans really haven't been able to participate in really since 2019. You know, it's good for Navy to be at a point in the season this far in, almost halfway, where these things matter. So fingers crossed that I have power and I have the ability to watch these games, but in general, just keeping an eye on the top of the leaderboard there.
And keeping an eye on Milton and the rest of your family as definitely should be the priority. So we hope that you keep your power. We know that it's going to be a long week/weekend for everybody there in the state of Florida, not just Central Florida, as Milton decides he's going to take a northeastern track and then make a right-hand turn. But just be safe down there. Cut the promo for everybody so they can follow along with you at the mid-report. What do they need to know?
I am at Navy Bird Dog on Twitter, and I am at themidreport.com on the Rivals Network.
Mike James from the Mid Report, as always, great to catch up with you, my friend. Be safe, and we'll be keeping an eye on a fantastic 5-0 start in the rest of the season there with Navy. Thanks for dropping by the X, my friend.
Good to talk to you, John.